Χαίρετε.
Hello.
Καλώς ήρθατε στη διαδικτυακή.
Welcome to the online series of programs, The Realities of Our Country. Until now, we have hosted, within the framework of the program, the presidents of the associations of the Kurdistan cases. After the sixth episode, where we had invited a lawyer, a legal advisor of the cases of Bekir-Ousta, we have Ahmed Kara, who is attorney of the Bekir-Ousta cases. Welcome, Mr. Kara. Good to be with you. So let's start with the first question. The Turkish Union of Xanthi was established in 1927 and operated without any problem for about 50 years. But why did it close down afterwards? The Turkish Union of Xanthi was established on the 40th of April 1927, indeed. So in 2 weeks, it will celebrate 95 years since its establishment. So 39 years out of these 95 total years. So 39 years were difficult years with judicial proceedings, either national or at an European level, of the European Court of Human Rights. So until 1983, this association operated without any problem, and it didn't cause any problem, of course, to the country. And the presidents and the members of the board of directors of the association of the union participated very often in national or local events in Xanthi. So it was a fully legal, and it didn't experience any problem whatsoever. And of course, it didn't cause any problem either to the public order of the country, or it didn't pose a risk for the public security of the country. Nevertheless, unfortunately, when the relations between Turkey and Greece changed and started affecting the minority living in Greece, the prefect back then, of course, right now there are no prefects anymore, so the then prefect of Xanthi made interim proceedings, injunction proceedings in order to remove the sign of the union, because the word Turkish was part of the title. So the judicial proceedings that was initiated after this is still pending. And there was a decision that was issued by the Court of Human Rights in 2008, but until now, this has not applied yet. So the reason, okay, let me be clear. The establishment, the foundation of the Turkish state in Cyprus, in northern Cyprus, unfortunately was the reason, was a pretext for which the prefect of Xanthis filed this lawsuit and removed the operation of the association. Okay, on the 27th of March 2008, the European Court of Human Rights decided that the freedom of assembly of the Union of Xanthi and the other two associations was violated. What was the decision of the European Court against Greece? The three decisions of the European Court of Human Rights regarding the Union of the Turkish Union of Xanthis and the two other associations, Association of Young People, were very similar with each other. Of course, the decision of the court regarding the youth of Evros Prefecture, dated in back in October 2007. So that decision was taken before the other two decisions by the same court about the other two associations. So the three decisions are very similar with each other. Indicatively, I will tell you that the European Court says that the right referred to in Article 11 of the Convention concerns the liberty, the freedom of people to create, to establish associations for cultural reasons, and this is part of the fundamental freedoms. And with that, it goes on saying, and the European Court goes on saying that it doesn't consider that the name and the use of the term Turkish in the title was sufficient in order to conclude that this would pose a risk to the public order of the country, because the national courts back then decided that this association posed a threat and a risk to the public order of the country. Another important element of the decision is the fact that the court says that some views sound very shocking, but that their dissemination cannot be considered as a threat to the territorial integrity of the country. So these are some of the things mentioned in the three decisions taken by the European Court. We know that after the decisions of the European Court, all three unions went back to court in order to apply the decisions of the European Court. However, the lawsuit of the Union of Xanthi was dismissed in 2021, so the right to appeal was no longer possible. Why did the Supreme Court dismiss the application of the Union of Xanthi? After the decision of the European Court on Human Rights with regard to the three associations, my colleagues who were involved in these cases tried to find ways to ensure that the Turkish Union of Xanthi would go back to operation, or to recognize the two other associations which were in the process of being recognized. And the competent courts decided not to allow their establishment. So they found an article 758 of the Code of Procedural Code, which allow for some cases to the litigants, to the two parties, to, under some circumstances, to ask for the re-examination and the retrial of their case. However, unfortunately, the Greek courts, that is the appeal court and the Supreme Court, decided that in the case of these associations, well, that this cannot be applied in civil law because because the Article 758 cannot apply in these cases. Of course, after that, given that the Committee of Ministers at the Council of Europe monitors these cases and asks Greece to comply with this, some amendments were issued, and we can talk about this later. So let me tell you at this point that after the decision of the Supreme Court, well, actually, the European Court took another decision that dismissed the appeals on the ground that there is already a decision, and the compliance of Greece with this decision is something that is monitored by the Committee of Ministers. So therefore, based on this, the amendment was issued, the Article 758 was amended, and following this change, we made a new application for all three associations, asking the application and the application of the three decisions of the European Court. But once again, in the case of the Union of the Turkish Union of Xanthi, for which we have a decision of the Supreme Court, unfortunately, they invoked the provision with regard to the paragraph 2, actually, of the amendment. So it decided that the application of the Turkish Association of Xanthi could not be admitted because this union continues to pose a threat to the public safety, and that it should be suspended. It should stop operating. Of course, this is in full contrast with the decision of the European Court, which has controlled all the things that are invoked by the Supreme Court. And I really can't understand why there the Supreme Court in Greece doesn't comply with the decision of the Supreme Court. I think that the grounds, the reasons are more political than legal. After the decision of the Supreme Court, the Turkish Union of Xanthi had organized in 2021 a protest. 7 months later, research was initiated against the president and other personalities of the minorities that participated in this protest. So, what was the reason why this protest was organized? And then, what is the reason why was there an investigation that started? Listen, when the president was called to go and give a testimony, we were really surprised because the protest was really peaceful. And the reason why we organized this protest was because we wanted to show that there is a problem and to show that in spite of the decision of the European Court, Greece refuses to comply with this decision, and that this is what we wanted to do, is to make this known to the public, to the international community. Of course, all authorities, all competent authorities were informed before the protest took place, and during the protest, nothing happened. At the end of the protest at the central square of Xanthi, the president gave a speech, delivered a speech, and the president said that, okay, 14 years have passed since the decisions were taken with regard to these three associations by the European Court, but our country refuses to comply with the decisions. And as you said, 7 months later, both the president and some other personalities, such as the Mufti of Xanthi and Komotini, were asked to go and testify. The two Mufti also faced well, let me tell you that there was a publication of the local newspaper in Xanthi, and these two people didn't put on didn't wear the mask, which was necessary back during the period, but it was demonstrated from the evidence held by the police that during the protest they did wear a mask, but when they reached the final destination, then in this case they removed the masks. So the president was asked to testify about the offenses of the criminal code. The first one had to obedience, and the second one has the dissemination of false and fake news. So I don't know if we really can talk about such things. This is something that we really can understand. We, of course, submitted written pleadings and 1 month ago, and we're waiting from the prosecutor, the competent prosecutor. So the Council of State monitors this case, and the next examination will take place in June. What are your expectations from this Committee of Ministers of the Council of State in the light of the last development, the recent developments that you mentioned? The Committee of Ministers of the Council of State, since the issuance of the relevant decisions in all meetings, monitors these cases, so it tries to see whether Greece complies or not. There are some interim decisions, and Greece is invited to comply with these interim decisions. Until now, this has not been the case. And what I perceive as an attorney, since who have been following these cases since 10 years, is that our country tries by any means to find a way out of this situation, and using different pretexts to justify its stance, its position. And even though the amendment has passed from the parliament, in a way, of course, that didn't satisfy anyone. This is actually the reason why the minority deputies in that session were against that amendment, on the ground that in this amendment, instead of obliging the country to comply with the decisions of the European Court of Human Rights, gave more opportunities to the country to not comply. But I firmly believe that since we have the decision of the Supreme Court, which dismisses the application of the union, the Turkish Union, and the two cases of the two other associations have been discussed, and we're waiting for the decisions, and we expect them by June. So I don't think that there's something else left to be done on behalf of this association. So therefore, the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe needs to take some measures, and these are the measures that are provided for by Article 6 of the Convention on Human Rights. Paragraph 4 stipulates that if the Committee of Ministers judges that a party refuses to comply with a decision, it can, after a warning and after a decision by the 2/3 of majority of the members, to refer this case to the court. If the party fails to comply, this means that the Committee of Ministers needs to decide sooner or later to refer this case to the European Court on Human Rights, again, as it was the case with a map of against Azerbaijan recently. This is what we're waiting for, and this is what we hope that will happen, because otherwise the whole thing will be a very big question mark. I'm talking about the existence of the Council of Europe, and how these decisions are enforced or not, and if the countries comply with the decisions of the European Court on Human Rights or not, in spite of the fact that according to a specific article, the parties of the country's signatory comply, are obliged to comply. Okay, to conclude, on behalf of the associations that you represent, what are your expectations from the legislative, executive, and the judiciary powers of the country? I express the view of the members, at least of the Turkish Union of Xanthi, because I used to be president in that union for 3 years. And I know very well what the members desire, and I also know what the members of the other associations that are in the process of establishment. So what the members of these associations want is to be treated as equal citizens of this country, and also our country, whether the legislative, executive, or judiciary power, not to treat these people in a way, how to say it, how to formulate, well, to treat them as citizens of this country who pay all their obligations towards this country. This is what they're waiting for, nothing more. And the fact that they are part of a minority should not be for them a disadvantage for them, but an advantage, because this is what makes this country richer. And this is what should be considered by all powers. Thank you very much, Mr. Kara, for being here. Thank you for being honest and replying in an honest way to all the questions. I'd like to thank the technical assistants and the interpreters. We'll be back again with you in the next episode, which will be broadcasted in 2 weeks from now. Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.